Hey everyone, welcome to the 284th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And I'm going to go with a really good show for you today. We are going to be talking about the FBI, Google and Apple's latest news on their contact tracing work. We've got an acquisition in the smart apartment space, vulnerabilities in Microsoft's Azure Sphere, and we have a whole mess of things coming from Amazon, including a wearable, outdoor cameras, and a new way to pay. Plus, a little bit of news from Wise, Sonos, and a new smart alarm clock. Plus, we're going to hear from our guest, Matan Tesler, who is a VP of products at Autonomo. We're going to be talking about what happens when you basically take all the data from your car and start using it for new services. Some cool things can happen. So, before you hear from Matan, you're going to hear from one of our sponsors, Fairy. And now, I think it's time to start the show. So let's get it started with a message from another one of our sponsors, Silicon Labs, and their Works With conference. If you have anything to do with the smart home, you're going to want to attend Silicon Labs Works With event. This is a free virtual smart home developer conference that's happening next week. That's September 9th and 10th. Engineers from Amazon, Google, Samsung, and more will lead hands-on workshops, technical training, educational panels, and more so they can train engineers, developers, and product managers how to design a product to quote-unquote work with any smart home ecosystem or wireless protocol. Plus, there's going to be some me there. On Wednesday, I will be moderating a panel that will feature people from Philips and IKEA and Assa Abloy. We're going to be talking about Project Chip, and we're going to be talking about what developers want. It's going to be awesome. So register today for Works With by Silicon Labs and bring your teammates. You can go to workswith.scilabs.com to register. Okay, Kevin. Our first story today is from The Intercept. They reported they got a cache of documents from police departments, and apparently these documents showed that the FBI is a little concerned about Ring. Not only is it awesome for police departments because they can use it for surveillance, but that surveillance can kind of be turned around onto law enforcement. So police and law enforcement were worried that suspects or people of interest in cases that might be served warrants could see the police coming, quite literally, through their connected doorbells.
You get what you ask for, law enforcement.
Yeah, so it's a two-way street. The bulletin says that, quote, if used near the execution of a search, potential suspects could learn of law enforcement's presence nearby, and law enforcement personnel could have their images captured, thereby presenting a risk to their present and future safety. My goodness. It sounds a lot like what the police use it for in reverse. So I still think the balance of power here is with law enforcement because they have the entire apparatus of the state on their side. So I don't feel like super bad for them.
I'm laughing in a sense because somebody who was a person of interest was actually at one of somebody else's house and they were monitoring their own home Ring doorbell and saw police or law enforcement coming, I guess, to serve a search warrant. The guy's like, I'm not there, but I can see you.
Exactly. Am I excited about it? I'm like, turnabout's fair play. Wah wah. There's not much else to say about this other than I do have a hard time recommending Ring doorbells now to people. And they do work. They work well for people. If you're not worried about complicity in any of these things, becoming part of the law enforcement marketed, I won't say sponsored because it's not, marketed surveillance network, go for it. But I do have a bit of a problem with that. And maybe it's naive. Nobody else markets their stuff through police departments. So that's the biggest issue I think I have. Any device has the potential to be subpoenaed.
True. And I still wonder, a couple of months back, I installed a Ring doorbell for a neighbor and they didn't ask my recommendation for what they should buy. I probably would have steered them away from it. However, they are an Amazon Madam A home, so I get it. I wonder how many people really, really know about this whole neighborhood thing. And
not many.
Yeah. See, that's what worries me more.
And I don't think they think through the implications of it either. That's probably because a lot of the people who are doing this are in relatively privileged positions. So, Ring's not going to educate them.
No.
So it's up to people like us. Here we are trying to do a little bit of education. But Speaking of education, that's not really the segue I wanted, but Apple and Google, they had introduced their contact tracing efforts. They said they would make it easier to do what they're calling an exposure notification system inside their apps. And they had made it possible for states to build contact tracing apps on top of that ENS. But what's come up is a lot of the states, it's too hard to build their own apps and maintain it. So now this week, Apple and Google are launching auto-generated software framework that will let states deploy their app. It's much more basic, and it means more data will actually end up with Apple and Google because they can't help it. They need it to actually build the app and keep the app running and do the function of the exposure notification. But they're trying to make it easier for overwhelmed public health departments. And I can see this. I mean, when they said that they were basically opening up the framework to these organizations, I was like, yeah, these organizations are not going to build an app.
Right. And as a reminder, because you're right, they will have more data, these two companies. They have said, and I hope they stick to this, that they're not going to keep that data. They're not going to use it for ads or any other services. They're either going to remove the data or they're going to donate it to research. So while they will have more data, I'm still hopeful that they follow through with what they said they were going to do. And I have no reason to believe otherwise. So,
right. I think they will.
I do too.
Maybe I'm naive. That's going to be the catchphrase for this podcast. Maybe I'm naive. So yeah, this is a good deal. Just so you know, there are only 6 states right now that actually have launched their contact tracing apps on this system. There are about 25 that are exploring it. So we're getting there. And these systems will work across states. So, you know, if someone's from Texas comes up and visits me in Washington, theoretically, and I don't think Washington or Texas have built these apps yet, our Bluetooth tokens could be exchanged and our coronavirus status tracked from the standpoint of notifying us that we have had an exposure. All right, that's today's in COVID news. We have an acquisition. This is today's consolidation news. Stratus Iot, which is a company I've followed for a while. The CEO, Felicity Moorman, has been a guest on the podcast, if not once, maybe even twice. And it's been purchased for an undisclosed amount by RealPage. RealPage is a publicly traded property management company. And Stratus Iot, their tech is they build out networks and put smart devices in apartment buildings. That's all they do. And they're in almost 400,000 homes, which is a lot.
It is. That's actually across multiple continents, though.
Yes, the US, Japan, UK, and several countries in Europe and Latin America. They actually can link into the Nest stuff. They've got their security clearances, as it were. But this is a big deal because RealPage, they manage about 19 million units throughout the US. So RealPage kind of gets some expansion, like they can go into Europe, but that's a lot of new apartments to pop smart systems in. And I have liked what Felicity has done from a privacy standpoint. She talks about her software and system was built with the idea of when the landlord turns the property over to the resident, none of that data gets sent. They no longer see the data coming from that apartment unit, except for possibly like leak data. So there are some things that are problematic for the whole unit. So they'll see that, but they don't see like, oh, they're using their air conditioning right now or their lights are turned off. They don't see any of that. And I don't know, I'm excited. It's time for consolidation in this industry. We've got a couple other big players. Point Central, which is a unit of alarm.com. They actually offer smart apartment stuff. There's also Smart Rent, which raised a whole heck of a ton of money. And then there's kind of pieces of this that also exist that do door locks or package services. So exciting. Maybe we'll look for more of this. Oh, the other stat that was interesting here is RealPage says that smart tech can generate a revenue lift of $55 per unit, which...
Well, that adds up if it's true.
Yeah, well, and I guess if you charge like an extra $1 or $2 more in rent, but you can also do a lot with savings and flipping apartments, you know, that sort of thing.
Conservation. So, yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. Okay, let's talk about vulnerabilities in Azure Sphere. No!
Yep.
Microsoft launched Azure Sphere a while back, and now it's generally available, and you have all the hardware. This is their security program, and it's actually really good. It has a cloud component. It has a hardware device component. And what happens is the hardware device securely communicates with the cloud. It gets updates on vulnerabilities, lets the cloud know like this is the traffic patterns I'm seeing. And the cloud's like, oh no, that's terrible. So it's a really nice system. People really have liked it, but it's software. And in this world, nothing stays the same. Nothing is secure. You just got to keep on top of it. So these vulnerabilities were discovered by researchers at Cisco Talos, and they found some vulnerabilities back in July, but they found 4 more. Microsoft has assured them that these are patched. Cisco let Microsoft know, and Microsoft was like, thanks, Cisco, we'll fix it. And they did. So both of these vulnerabilities were actually pretty problematic. They both let you insert and run your own code inside the hardware. And that's not awesome. But they required you to actually have physical access to the hardware in one instance. And then the other, you could actually insert it via malware. So that was a little less awesome. But Microsoft is on it. It's done. The bugs are patched. And I assume we'll see more, and hopefully Microsoft will continue to be aggressive in terms of saying, oh yeah, let's fix that.
And hopefully Microsoft's a little more public in the future about these, because it did not issue what's called a CVE, or Common Vulnerability and Exposure Notification. Anytime there's a bug of high priority, high impact that is found by researchers, by a company themselves and so on, they're supposed to actually register these. And it's assigned a number and a public notification with a link. And that can be done after it's even patched. That's fine. But that's not being done in this particular case for these 4 issues with Azure Sphere. So without the cybersecurity report from Cisco Talos, I don't know that we all would have known about this, to be honest.
Oh, so Microsoft might be like wanting to keep Azure Sphere as like this beautiful, secure place. The illusion.
Maybe. I guess they can say, well, it was patched by, in time before it went public. Maybe nobody was impacted. I still think they should be filing those. That's just me.
Okay. I have no opinion because I am not a security expert. But I do like people to err more on the side of like, oh, public notification.
I have an opinion and I'm not a security expert.
Well, there you go. Okay. Hey, it's gadget time, y'all. A lot of new gadgets coming out. Exciting. Let's talk about the first one, which came out last week after we recorded the show. It made me so sad because I really wanted to talk about it. This is the Amazon Halo. This is a wrist strap with sensors embedded in it, but no display. You wrap it around your wrist. It's $99 and has a $3.99 a month subscription fee. And what it is it's Amazon's wellness tracker. What? Finally. Kevin, you've argued that Amazon should have bought Fitbit.
I thought they would when we heard Fitbit was kind of shopping.
So basically what this does, this has activity tracker, tracks sleep, tracks activity, tracks heart rate, does all that. But because it's Amazon, they had to add something weird. And not weird necessarily, but something related to voice. And what it is intermittently the device is going to check your tone, basically.
Watch your tone.
It records your tone and assigns an emotion to it. And then it shows you on the app and you get to say yes or no. And you also just get to see, oh, you sound angry. Are you angry? Now, everyone was like, what? So weird. But also it's important to note that Amazon does not get access to this data. They are very clearly saying that A, you have to opt into that emotional tone, which I think people will because it's kind of like, ooh, fun. 2, it gets recorded and stored on the device only until it hits your phone. Once it hits your phone, it's deleted from the device. And once your phone has registered the emotion, the recording is deleted.
Right.
So it doesn't know that you were angry about, I don't know, your wife cheating on you. It knows nothing. It just knows you're mad.
Yeah. I mean, you could say it's measuring potential emotions and all that. And I think this is a good approach to say they're deleting everything and so on and so forth. I still wonder, only because this has happened with the home devices, the Echo devices, I should say, could the data from the app be subpoenaed to see what your emotional state might have been at a certain time?
Yes. Were you feeling murderous?
Okay. I don't think they're going to check the tone for that, but yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because the individual data is interesting. People are probably very worried about their actual recordings, which I get. You probably don't want Amazon to hear you yell at your dog, right? No one wants that. But the emotional tone and getting that kind of insight is still...
It doesn't get more personal than that, I think.
Yeah, how are you feeling today?
That freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, and I applied to get the band because I'm actually currently shopping for a new Fitbit or a new activity tracker. And I've actually been looking at the Whoop band, which we've talked about. And I'll just say the Whoop band looks exactly like the Halo, only the Whoop band's been around for at least 2, maybe 3 years. And the CEO of Whoop actually did a Twitter thread where he talked about, we met with Amazon to see about investing, and lo and behold, here comes this. There was a wonderful article in the Wall Street Journal, which we've had several companies on the show come and talk to the idea that, hey, we met with Amazon and poof, they released our product. This kind of looks like that. Whoop has a subscription model. With Whoop, you buy the band, you have to pay for a 6-month subscription. The subscription is $30 a month, and it's $180 to get the band plus that 6-month commitment. And we've talked about it on the show before, but it shows you kind of like how much energy you have left should you try that big run. You know, it gives you actionable data as opposed to just data. So we've been really excited about it.
In terms of the subscription for this, as you said, it's $3.99 a month.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't renew it, you still can use the band. Different than the Whoop, I believe.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, but you're only going to get access to basic sleep tracking, heart rate, and step tracking. So it's kind of, most of the cool stuff is gone. And speaking of cool stuff, I'm curious about the body composition bit where it measures body fat percentage and will create a 3D model of you in the app. And I'm really curious. So I put in for one of these too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't want to like strip down and get my body fat reported to Amazon. But on the same thing, I know Amazon's really pushing hard on clothes and they had like their Look camera. Imagine actually having Amazon say, based on what we know about your body, this is your size. And I'd be like, ooh, creepy, but super helpful.
Helpful. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll just see on that.
Maybe we'll get this.
I hope so. All right. Let's talk about the new Blink indoor and outdoor camera.
Yes, just announced this week. Seems like the Blink cameras just came out not too long ago, but there are new ones. Blink indoor for $79 and outdoor for $99 will become available on Amazon September 16th. Interesting here is they have extended the battery life of the outdoor camera because instead of taking 2 batteries, it now holds 4 batteries. So they say you can get up to 4 years of outdoor usage. I don't know about that, but it's obviously I haven't tested one for 4 years, so I can't say. Additionally, and this is new and good, I think, they are going to sell, is not available yet, it's coming soon for about $35, a Sync Module 2, which basically you plug that in. It's a small little box and it has a USB port on it, and it can read your videos from your cameras, up to 10 cameras, no subscription fee. It can do it right to a USB flash drive.
Wow. So that's local storage.
It is. I like that. You can still do the subscription plan and not have local storage. You don't have to buy the $35 module, but that storage will cost you, again, I think $3 or $4 a month for one device or $10 for all devices in your house.
Nice. All right. And I will say you're casting doubt on the battery life. So you tried out a Blink camera at some point. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it was back in April. That was the Blink Mini. So there's not a new version of the Mini, but this was their $35 small plug-in cloud-connected camera. It was okay. I mean, it did the job, but it doesn't have local storage. And I don't think this is going to work with the Sync module either. So I don't know. I kind of recommended a Wise. I'm like, why spend $15 more? Just get a Wise and have your local storage, right? Camera quality was good and so on, but I didn't see the point of buying one.
And just as an update, your Wise outdoor cam, it did last through a hurricane. Yay.
It did.
But you've had it up for like a month now. And where's your battery life?
Yeah, we checked right before the show because Wise says you should get 3 to 6 months before you need to recharge. And it doesn't take long to recharge the device. It's obviously easy to take down. It's on a magnetic stand. But I was at 57, 58%. And I do have a lot of motion because we have an HOA that comes and we have people, landscapers, and so on, a lot of people walking in front of that camera. So maybe for me, the 3 months is about right, maybe a stretch. For people who don't get a lot of activity, maybe you could get 6 months.
Okay. Yeah. And that's why your mileage may vary on these things. Plus temperature. Your battery is going to drain faster when it's colder, just as an FYI for everybody out there who sticks their cameras outside and winter is coming.
Yeah, good point, because we are in the northern hemisphere, so it's been summer usage here. So that's going to be worse in a couple months for me.
Probably. We'll see. All right. Just as a reminder, I'll just throw this out there. Amazon, when they bought Blink, they actually bought Blink way before Ring. And Blink started out as a chip company. They had a new energy efficient way to do video processing. That was what Blink was. And nobody bought their chips. So they decided to make a camera. Actually, some companies did buy their chips. It wasn't an awesome business. It was too commodified. So then they created a really cool low power wireless camera using that technology. That became Blink, and that is what Amazon bought. But I think the chip technology is way more interesting there. But that's just me because I like chips. So let's continue talking about Amazon because they launched Madam A, pay for gas. If you stop at an Exxon station, you can just not swipe your card anymore. It's Exxon and mobile locations. And this is cool because skimmers, we had this problem all the time in Texas. I no longer shop for gas because I drive an electric car, but always they would put skimmers at the gas stations. You'd swipe your card in the pump and your credit card data would be transferred. So this is kind of nice, I think.
It is. I don't know what the experience is like because I haven't tested it. They just came out with this. You can use the Madam A app on your phone, so Android or iOS. You can use it if you've got any Echo Auto products, Echo Buds. If your car has a Madam A app built in, some do. So any of those add-ons would work. So yeah, it's just quick and easy to say, I'm going to pay for gas and you don't deal with the skimmers.
Yeah, and there's a lot happening here, by the way. In the back end, what's happening is there's IoT, y'all. There's geolocation, so it needs to know where you are. So it's finding out where you are. It's confirming the pump based on geolocation because geolocation, most of it is a little less granular than you might want here. So it's like, are you at pump 7? And you're like, yes, don't lie. And then it's got to activate the pump remotely. That's not too new. People could remotely activate gas pumps for a long time. And then they do the payment processing and all that stuff. So I don't know, pretty sweet. Okay. Amazon also won FAA approval for their Prime Air drone delivery fleet. And again, Amazon is not going to start sending our stuff via drones just yet. But now they can. They're
joining UPS and Wing, which is an Alphabet company, to have FAA approval for drone delivery. Like you said, don't expect your next package from Amazon to come by drone. They're still testing it in low population areas. It's limited to about 5 pounds of product within a half an hour. You have to be 15 miles within the drone delivery area. So there's a lot that has to happen yet before you'll see it. I will see it, but good to see.
Yay. Also some news from Wise. 2 things that people are going to care about. One is the surprise launch of Wise is making some headphones. By the way, according to protocol, so is Sonos. But also the Wise thermostat. Here's an update. They're in beta testing and they are launching Cam Plus for Wise outdoor cameras. That's going to give you extended recording time, which people have been complaining about. So they want extended recording time for motion events. The Cam Plus service it's in alpha testing and they want to have it released by November. So hopefully. And then those Wise headphones, they have active noise canceling. They're not talking about it, but there it is. So if you're a Wise customer, you probably already got the email, but it's always fun to see what they're up to. Those crazy folks at Wise.
I wonder if these are in ear or over the ear because the Sonos ones look like big cans over the ear.
Yeah. I like big cans over the ear.
I like big cans and I cannot lie.
Ta-da. I thought you were going to go a different direction with that, but okay. Final gadget, Lenovo is making a smart clock.
They're making another one. You have the original Lenovo smart clock that debuted at CES 2019. Wait, how much was that? 50, 80, 70? I don't know what you paid.
I don't remember. I buy so many gadgets.
I hear you. This one, I'm surprised at the price. It's $50. And that sounds good, but I'm still surprised that it's 50 and not more like 30 to 40 because this is almost like a cut down version of what you have. It's less a smart display and more of an old school.
It looks like my Sony Dream Machine, y'all.
Yeah, like an old alarm clock because it's not an LCD display. They saved cost by going with LEDs, regular old 20-year-old alarm clock. But it has the microphone. It has speakers, not very loud, 3-watt speakers. It has a USB type A on the back so you can charge a phone with it. It has a night light. And then they've got icons for the weather and the temperature. So you get some very basic information in addition to the time.
I like it. And I'm kind of interested in this. I like the fact that the weather's on there. The only thing I would note, and I'm very curious about, is how low can you turn that LED? Because I still have my Sony Dream Machine. And the reason I do, even though it's pretty basic, I just use it to check the time. And I love the fact that the LEDs are red because they're not so bright in the middle of the night. And I was looking at these are white LEDs. I'm like, I don't know if they can take it low enough for me not to be disturbed. So I'm like, come on, y'all, just turn it red. That's the thing you can do.
I guess we have to buy one and see.
Yeah, there we go. All right. That is a lot of news, but that is all the news that we're going to talk about. So now it is time to go to our IoT podcast hotline and take a question from our listener. Plus, it is the beginning of a new month, which means we have a winner. We're going to announce our winner after we answer the question. So let me remind you that if you would like to be entered to win or just have your question answered on the show, just give us a call at 512-623-7424. And the IoT Podcast Hotline is brought to you by Schlage. The best home automation adds convenience, not hassle. And with its built-in Wi-Fi, the Schlage encodes smart Wi-Fi deadbolt can show you just how easy secure can be. Learn more at schlage.com. And I'll tell you, this is so easy. My husband set it up and was able to do it. And he doesn't know anything about smart products, except that sometimes they occasionally make his life miserable. So this week's question comes from Jonathan, who is interested in wireless tags. Apparently, he saw it at a friend's house, which is where I see lots of connected gadgets. I'm like, ooh, I want that. He wants to know a little bit more about this. Let's hear his question.
Hi there. Quick question is, I hear from some friends of mine that are starting to get into these wireless tags where they monitor things like temperature and they monitor, I know, some other things, but it lets them know on their phone if temperatures exceed something. Like one of them's got one in the refrigerator, one of them has one like outside for plants to determine temps and stuff. I've not ever heard you talk about that on the podcast. Is that something that you know anything about or have any experience with? And is anything that you recommend with that? I'd love to hear about it. I'm Jonathan calling from North Carolina. Thanks so much.
Okay, Jonathan, I don't know what your friend is using. We've talked about this a couple times on the show related to freezers in people's garages or basements, which has some challenges because you typically will need a hub. And you typically, for a freezer in a remote area, need a cord because freezers they're built to block wireless signals, right? They're giant metal boxes.
They're built to keep things cold. They just happen to also block wireless signals.
Yes. So a freezer is a kind of a special place, especially a remote freezer. And we'll talk about that. But we did find kind of two really interesting solutions. And let me tell you, there are a lot of options out here on this. So we thought we might be best off telling you very generally what to think about. So one is connectivity. So a lot of these use Bluetooth, and they use Bluetooth because it's more power efficient. Wi-Fi takes a lot of power. And this way your sensor lasts for longer, right? And a lot of them will have a hub if it's really important for it to go the distance. So if you see a Bluetooth only sensor without a hub, then it's only going to connect to your phone, which is fine, like for your indoor freezer. If you want to pull the temperature reading off whenever you go to the fridge and you have your phone in your pocket, that will work. But if you don't ever go by the place where the sensor is, you're never going to get the alert. So that's something to think about with Bluetooth, no hub. I should say there's also lots of proprietary ones out there. The proprietary ones all will have a hub, and they usually have the proprietary signal, and then they talk to the hub, which converts it to Wi-Fi. And with Wi-Fi, then you have remote connection to the cloud. You have automatic notifications. It's great. So those are broad things to think about when you're thinking about buying one of these. You want to be like, oh, where is it? Do I need more capability or remote access to it? Or do I walk by this with my phone enough that it's okay? And it's not critical enough that if I don't walk by, I won't mind that I missed the notification. So with that in mind, we found two really interesting packages. I think I'm actually going to buy these and test them out. So you can wait to buy if you want. But Kevin, you want to talk about what we found?
Right. So one of the things we found, and you can see this on Amazon, is a mini wireless temperature and humidity sensor called Tempi, TEMPI.fi. And it almost looks like a tile Bluetooth tag in a sense. This has temperature, humidity, hygrometer, and as we said, it's Bluetooth. You could put this in a freezer and as Stacey mentioned, because it's Bluetooth and no hub, it's only when you're going to be close enough for that signal to get through the freezer that you're going to actually get data. So it's recording data, but it's not going to really notify you of anything in real time because, it does not have a hub.
But they do say that their Wi-Fi gateway is coming soon. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is because it's freaking easy to set up. You download the app, and then you take the sensor and you hold it next to your phone with the app open, and it's like, boom, done. It's connected. This is interesting. It's about $50, so kind of pricey.
Yeah, it's a very specific type of sensor because you're not going to find cheap sensors that are going to work in varying temperatures with the cold of a freezer, perhaps, if that's one of the things you want to monitor. I mean, it really is meant for local monitoring and local notifications around the home when you're in home. But as you said, they're going to have a hub for Wi-Fi access. So that way you should be able to get, assuming the signal can get out to the Wi-Fi hub, you should be able to get notifications when you're away that, hey, your freezer turned off or something's wrong with it because now the temp's going up.
And then the other thing that we found, which I really like this, I was very excited by it. These are products from a company that's wirelesstag.net. They do have a hub. The temperature sensors, for example, are about $30, and then the Ethernet hub is, I think, $50. So this is cool because it's both a location tracker. It also does temperature. It works with Amazon Echo and Google. You also can program it yourself. It works with IFT. It's a pretty powerful package. Oh, the Ethernet tag monitor is $40, and it comes with lots of different other sensors. This is a way to possibly add more sensors to your smart home system. So I don't know. I thought this was actually worth checking out.
It definitely has potential. It's got lots of integrations and you get movement as well, which is nice. Maybe if somebody opens your freezer, and I don't mean to harp on the freezer example, but lots of use cases for this.
Yeah, somebody's saying they did it with a disposable mousetrap plus one of these reusable sensor tags means that they get a notification when the trap is triggered and they don't have to wait for their mice to start stinking.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a use case.
I had a dead mouse in my house. Ugh, so gross. Okay, so Jonathan, we're going to test some of these out. So if you want to wait, but otherwise they're not super expensive and you too can plug. I think I would be most excited about the wireless sensor tags. I'm like, that is a very generic name. It's made by a company that's in Irvine, California. Basically, they're doing the software. The sensors are probably I bet they're either German or Swiss. That's what a lot of the sensors come from. And then the packaging and housing is probably somewhere in China. All right. Well, that concludes this week's question, but we must tell you who won. So the August winner of the Schlage lock of their choice, we don't know who they are, but we will give them a call and congratulate them and also let them know that they have won a Schlage lock. So congratulations, unnamed winner. And remember, if you would like to be entered to win our September contest, give us a call at 512-623-7424. September is actually the last month we'll be giving away the Schlage lock. So enter to win. That concludes this portion of the show. Please stay tuned for our guest, Matan Tesler, who is a VP of products at Autonomo, who's going to be talking to us about cool stuff you can do when your car's data is able to be accessed by different products and services. And now, a message from our sponsor. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. And our sponsor this week is Very, a leading IoT engineering firm. And I have Jen Gamble, who leads the data science practice at Very, here to talk to us. So, word on the street is that building machine learning IoT products is hard.
Yes, it definitely can be. In industrial manufacturing in particular, you tend to hear a lot of buzz these days. People are using terms like Industry 4.0, smart machines, sensor data, cloud computing, machine learning. But it's very common that machine learning industrial IoT projects never make it out of the proof of concept phase. On a recent client project at Very, we used Elixir to help bridge this gap from concept to production.
Okay, so what exactly is Elixir for those of us who are not familiar?
I'll use the words of its creators. Elixir is a dynamic functional programming language designed for building scalable and maintainable applications. And so at Very, the time we use Elixir the most is when we're working with Nerve, which is an Elixir-based open source platform and infrastructure that companies can use to build, deploy, and manage IoT devices. And one great thing about Nerve is that you can have Elixir developers doing your embedded development instead of having to write everything in C or C++, for example. And it's also handy that we can use Nerves Hub, which is the associated web service that manages firmware updates over the air.
Okay, so that's great. And on this industrial project, how did you use Elixir and Nerves?
So for this project, what we were building was a production system to go from PLC sensor data on a fleet of machines to a cloud-based application for machine monitoring and anomaly detection. The tools that we used from within the Elixir ecosystem, I already mentioned Nerves and Nerves Hub. We also used Phoenix for the backend of the web application, and we used the libraries Broadway and Ecto to build the data pipeline. The other non-Elixir components of the application included tools and resources from AWS, like IoT Core, SQS, Lambda, API Gateway, S3. And we also used Python libraries and AWS SageMaker for machine learning and React for the front end. Taking this approach was great because one of the most difficult things about building full stack IoT products is that there's such a wide diversity of skill sets required on the team. And we really like to take an agile MVP style development approach. So it can sometimes be a challenge to have the team work together tightly enough when they come from such different backgrounds. So being able to use Elixir developers for the embedded firmware development, the data pipelining, and the backend development really helps to streamline the process, as opposed to having 3 different developers using 3 different tech stacks for those components.
Wow. Okay. Sounds great. Jen, where do I go to learn more about how Very can help me with my IoT projects?
You can reach out to us at verypossible.com/Stacy. That's verypossible.com/STACUI.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacy Higginbotham, and today's guest is Matan Tesler, who is VP of Product at Autonomo. Hello, Matan. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. All right. So we should probably first get this started by having you tell us a little bit about what Autonomo is and does.
So Autonomo is a connected car data services platform. A connected car is basically a data center on wheels, and it generates around 25 gigabytes of data every hour it operates from multiple sensors, sometimes even over 150 sensors that are installed in the car. We enable companies to build apps and services based on car data. Autonomo provides a data sharing consent mechanism just to ensure that all involved parties are fully compliant with all the different data privacy regulations, such as GDPR or CCPA. We have over 20 million accessible cars on our platform, and we are engaged with 15 different OEMs.
And these OEMs, these are car manufacturers? Are they the people who build things that go into the cars for the car manufacturers to build the cars?
Those are car manufacturers. We are also engaged with different tier ones, which build the parts that eventually go into the cars, but those 15 are car manufacturers.
Got it. Historically, some of the car manufacturers have avoided doing deals with companies like Google for Android Auto because they were worried about sharing data and worried that the data was their lifeblood, that they needed to own it. And I'm curious how that has shifted over time, or if you're just a relatively neutral player.
That's a very interesting point. I think that today it is clear that the car ownership experience goes beyond just owning the car and driving the car. And there are many added value services that can be offered based on car data. And eventually, the data needs to be accessible for the app developers or service providers so that they can build these services and make it accessible. So I think that today it's already clear that there is a lot of benefit by making this data available, as long as all of the privacy, as long as this data is protected. And eventually, the data is shared whenever the person that owns the vehicle or the body that owns the vehicle wants the data to be shared. And in these cases, I think that all involved parties today understand the value of making the data available.
Well, let's talk about the value because there's so many use cases. And let's talk first about what people are doing today, and then let's get all crazy and think about the future. So today, you've got data from over 20 million vehicles coming in. What are people using that data for today?
So today we see already different kinds of companies in different use cases and industries use connected car data. I think that we see plenty of traffic management companies that use car data basically to measure traffic and improve and optimize traffic. We also see usage of some data that was not available in the past. As an example, in the past, a lot of the seemingly car data was collected from a mobile phone. So GPS, for example, was collected in a relatively good enough accuracy. However, today, car data can provide additional attributes and data parameters from sensors that were not previously available. For example, ADAS capturing road signs in real time. So today, there is the ability to identify in real time that a digital speed limit sign changed from 65 to 55 now in the rush hour. So traffic management platforms now use richer data sets to power their services.
Okay. And any other use cases that are interesting today, or shall we skip to the bright and shiny future?
We see additional use cases already picking up these days. We see parking services that use both aggregate data to understand parking patterns. For example, ultrasonic sensors can identify whether there is an object next to the driving car, which signals a potentially open parking space. And this is aggregate data that was also not available in the past. And at the same time, using identifiable data, assuming consent by the user, to offer the best parking place to you as a driver. So we see such services already exist and operate based on car data today. And we see very exciting use cases coming to life right now that I'll be happy to elaborate.
So let's talk about the bright and shiny future, because I feel like you mentioned, for example, mobile phone GPS data and how that affected automotive. And I think of a service like Waze. When everyone has mobile phones and they're driving around in their cars, you get a service that, very cool, gives you traffic, right? Real-time traffic information. So when we start thinking about our cars being just as equipped as mobile phones in terms of connections and even computing ability, what kind of new avenues of information does this open up?
Yeah, so I think that there are multiple opportunities for different for cities to become safer, and for fleets to become much more effective, and for other companies to offer more advanced services, and I'll be happy to elaborate. So for cities, for example, with a mobile phone, you can collect the GPS, but with the car, you can collect the GPS, but also identify a hard brake. So if you combine the two together, you identify areas or specific locations where there is a high hard brake. If you look at it in the aggregate level, you can identify the exact places where there is a likelihood for an accident. And this is something that is enabled by taking data from several sensors in the car and combining them together. And this new type of data is priceless. It can really improve safety and save life. So this is one example for how smart city can benefit from using car data. If we talk about fleets, for example, so fleets benefit from reduced operational costs if they use embedded connectivity instead of the traditional data collection models. They also can actually process the right amount of data that they need for their measurements, instead of all the data that is being collected by dongles, for example, that collect data all the time and send it over. And then there is a lot of processing cost involved. There are also companies that now offer tailored services for fleets, for example, full end-to-end tire pressure management. This is something that in the past either was not available or was very costly, and now became much more accessible. And this is value that fleets can get today, and we see it happening. We see first services being launched with this use case in mind. Another use case worth mentioning for fleets is the ability, for example, to track or to monitor pre-delivered cars before they are sold and delivered to the end consumer. In the past, it was not feasible to install a dongle, for example, for every car that leaves the factory, but still haven't got into the dealership or to the end consumer. But today, as the car leaves the factory with embedded connectivity, the financing company can actually monitor the car and see that it is being handled correctly up until it is delivered to the end consumer. So I think there are many different benefits for fleets and for the finance sector and for smart cities that we are starting to see the first cases, and I believe that we will see much more of that.
Okay. So this does beg the question of, like, on a financing perspective, if I as an individual am buying a car, that doesn't seem like an avenue that would be open to me because I would have to agree to that, as opposed to a fleet who would obviously want to have something like that in play because it is a corporate-owned vehicle. So can you talk to me about how people are communicating the data sharing agreements and how that changes the information available to you? Having a bunch of data on fleet cars, they're driven differently, they're used differently, as opposed to having a bunch of data on consumer cars.
Right. Across the different privacy regulations, there are very clear attributes that need to happen. And I think that the main one is to have explicit consent. And this explicit consent for data sharing involves which data attributes are being collected and for what use, and also who will get access to this data at the end. As long as all of these attributes of the data consent approval are being enforced, then everybody can benefit from the data, but also be assured that their data doesn't get to places where it shouldn't. Every service that will now want to get data to offer you, for example, usage-based insurance, will have to get your explicit consent to share specific data with them. For example, GPS or odometer, like the mileage that you have on your car, or the speed that you drive and how you drive. If you decide to share this data with an insurance company, you can benefit from a pay-how-you-drive insurance model, which will make it cheaper for you as long as you drive safely. So I think that as long as the attributes of data sharing consent are being enforced across the different parties that are involved, whether it's the OEM that basically generates the data and Autonomo, for example, as the data platform that delivers the data to the service provider, and the service provider that has to request access to get the data from you as the vehicle owner, then the different privacy regulations are being enforced.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about kind of the future of, I guess, automotive services, because you gave an example on the smart city side of looking at car data for like hard braking to see like maybe this is a dangerous intersection, or maybe this curve in the road needs better signage or something like that, right? But then there's also issues where maybe we could make services like AAA a little bit more effective.
So for a roadside assistance service, for example, today's experience is that if I have an issue with my car and I'm stuck in the middle of the road, I need to call the company and explain exactly where I am, and also explain what seems to be the problem in my car. The thing is that I'm not an expert, and I don't know what the issue is in my car. So probably the treatment and the service that I will get is not optimal. First, it's not optimal for me, and I will not get the best-in-class experience. And also, it's not cost-effective, or it's not optimized for the company, because they will probably have one or two different types of errors that they will send a tow truck, for example, if I describe a certain problem, but there isn't a real need for that. Maybe a scooter that delivers a specific part will fix the issue and will be much more cost effective.
And I know with COVID-19, we have kind of changed, I think, our priorities just a bit in terms of automotive. For a while, we were looking at shared transportation, right? The idea of owning your car seemed to be disappearing. But now, given the pandemic, and I don't know how long this will change things, but we're kind of coming back to like owning our own car, wanting to be alone in our car because public sharing of air is scary. So I'm curious how your data might help still ease the pressure of so many cars on the road trying to share space all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and nobody knows how long COVID will be here and what the experience will look like afterwards. But I think that on different levels, having access to car data is really important these days. Aggregate data that we used in the past is no longer relevant because traffic patterns have changed. And if you had algorithms that predicted the traffic load in certain hours or in the vacation days, for example, from previous years, it's no longer relevant. People behave differently right now. Basically, because less people fly, for example, there are much more active driving cars in each country because everybody stays in their countries. So I think that aggregate car data can help rebuild models today for every company that uses historical trends. So that's one angle. The other one, as an individual, right now, as you were saying, that there were different services that I was using to get around that not necessarily relate to my car, but things change right now, and we don't know how long it will last. Assuming that I own a car right now, I want the ownership experience to be enhanced, and this includes in-car delivery. For example, for groceries to get into my car, wherever my car is, because I don't want to go into the supermarket right now. And you also mentioned environmental impact. One trend that is happening already and is being enhanced is EV, right? Electrical vehicles. Charging is still an issue for EVs. If you need to plan a route and you own a car and you're driving 2 or 3 hours away from home, you need to charge your car in many cases on the way. But charging stations are not available like gas stations. So car data today helps energy companies to understand where there is heavy traffic or EVs so that they can build the next charging station. And this can be identified through using aggregate data from EVs and then offering a personal service for EV owners to plan their route and charge on the way. So basically, having access to this aggregate and personal data help us with saving the environment and together with the electric vehicle revolution.
All right. And you're right. All of our existing data models, maybe not all, but many of our existing data models are broken because we're just behaving so differently right now in the pandemic. And I appreciate you addressing that. All right. Thank you so much, Matan, for coming on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.